It is December. We've got installs working right now, lots of bidding going on for the upcoming year. We're checking our list on. We're making a list and checking it twice. And Josh, we're going to find out who's naughty, but most of us are nice. That's out. My name's Pete Hollenhorst. I work as the director of sales for new business development. Good news, y'all. You are at the Intellinet Network Solutions webinar for December. This is a best of show where we're bringing back great partners. We're talking about some really cool concepts that are there. The whole purpose of this is to connect great people with even better products and really appreciate that you're coming on, spending some time with us, whether you're watching us live, and lots of people here watching us live today. But if you're watching us on the redo or on the rewind, welcome. We're having a really good Tuesday. It's December 9th. Awesome. So on the agenda today, if you take a look on screen, I brought the two pros that I know. We've got Josh from Island that's here. He's going to talk about, a little bit about the field crew and just, building better networks, fast and stable and secure. Don's going to take us through a really interesting exercise, and we'll round that out with the pro performance plan. My name is Pete, and my job's to moderate while all this is going on. You've got a couple of different options. You can always use the chat box, or you can use the question box to interact with us. Always a good way. Don, one of the big ways that I like to go, if if you're working on Christmas Day, or not working, but if you're opening up, what's the one thing that you try to put into a stocking? And Josh, I'm coming right back to you. I'm not asking about that gift under the tree. What's the stocking stuffer that's the go-to? For
Oh, board.
me,
Oh,
oh,
yeah.
go ahead. Yeah, go.
Board games, if there's little kids, because then you get another hour to sleep while they open it up. It has to be something that takes 30 minutes of an hour. So, like a little board game, something like that. And then you get to sleep in a little bit and go back to bed.
True story. This is the only time I do the automated timer on my coffee maker is on Christmas Eve, just so that the smell of coffee in the house makes it a little bit easier. But I had two small ones that would get a call from the North Pole every Christmas Eve, which was kind of cool there. I got to take that with the board games. See, the problem is that sometimes that's Monopoly, and that no one needs that on Christmas Day. It's supposed to be a good moment, not a fighting moment. It's actually really, really good. Um, a handful of the things that I normally do, I'll normally put a scratcher or a couple of scratchers in. Kids always enjoy doing that. You get that small motor skill type of stuff. And then I'm a big fan of actually healthy treats. I'm that guy putting it in. But dried grapes, I like to raise awareness or raise an awareness on dried grape. No, we're not going to do that. But your raisins, corn nuts, things like that. What about you, Josh? I see you nodding. What's the one thing that you slip in either on Hanukkah as kind of the smaller one, or on Christmas Eve for those that are
Oh,
celebrating
see, you
Christmas?
stumped me at first because I grew up celebrating Hanukkah, not Christmas. So I was like, what do people put in stockings? So rather than think about what I was like, what would be a good thing? And what I
Yeah.
settled on in my head, and this is just me picturing a Christmas morning, is some sort of like sweet, like minty thing. I'm picturing kids crawling out of bed, high on energy, crawling all over you, and the last thing you want to deal with is morning breath. So let's shut them up,
No,
get them something sweet, and not make them
I like
smell a little bit
this.
less.
No, I like this a lot. So I grew up actually dual faith, where we celebrated Hanukkah alongside of Christmas, which was kind of cool. And day one, on the first day and on the last day, these are the really good gifts. Like you always want to send it out with a bang. But I'll
Mm.
tell you, there were some stretch moments. Like I got a pack of Necco wafers one time on night four, where I'm just like, well, that's it. And you want to be gracious and everything else, but you're taking me back now. I'm missing Gelt quite a bit. Helen, William, you are more than welcome to chime in with any suggestions there in the chat box. We'd love to have that. One of the big reasons why you're probably here is you want to see that best of recap. What did we talk about over the past year? One of the big things, though, that if you're new to the Intellinet brand, if you're new to Intellinet and Island, we really do understand the everyday installer. Most of us come from a CEDIA or a security-based area. All of us support a lot of great, strong distribution. But products that Don and I select when we come up in topic areas, we try to utilize products for daily use that are there and narrow that down into those key SKUs that help you form the backbone of installation activities. And from there, we want to use something that's a part of that daily area. The big reason, though, to partner with Intellinet, comprehensive product coverage. I'm always amazed at the level of products that we have. We're really well known for our PoE, but we've got 90% of the active and passive networking needs, and we've simplified, our go-to-market. If you need it, generally there's a place where you're going to be able to buy it, and that comes with a lot of reliability and customer support. This is one of the big reasons why Don's here. If you're new, though, to Intellinet, it'll remind you that we do more than just PoE that are there. We've got some great switches. We've got some great injectors. Yes, I really love the capabilities, but we also do some really nice niche things that are there. We're going to be talking in February a lot about fiber optic patch cables and adapters and what you can do with higher rates of speed. And then when we talk about fiber optic patch cables, we should also talk about, CAT and where CAT's going. CAT 5e. This is where I first started in the industry, and then we went to CAT 6 and then CAT 6a. I just, set up the Ponderosa west of the Intellinet headquarters, and we actually ran Cat 8 at a much higher expense that's there, but we've got those types of cables if you need it. And then patch panels, racks, cabinets, oh my. And when you finish the job, we've got tools and testers, to certify any projects that you're out doing. Intellinet offers a solution. If you're involved in active, we can provide a solution. If you're involved in passive networking, we can do that. If you need to go short distances or long distances, we can do that. And then if you're looking for a partner, one of our best is Island Router. One of the big things about Island Router, we had Tom Gallo on, it was our kickoff webinar that's out, but I want you to meet the sales aspect, the day in, day out, and actually Josh is on the road right now, but we're going to welcome Island back in as our best of 2025, one of our better partners that are out there, but more importantly, we're going to introduce and welcome Josh into the field crew. So welcome, Josh. It's good to have you.
Thank you. Thank you for my
Good stuff.
hotel room on the road.
Now, for those of you that can't see him on camera, here's a much bigger picture. Very regal looking Josh that's out. And Josh is, what is your title again, Josh?
Regional business partner executive or something like that. I'm sales.
Excellent. Okay. No, you do a great job. Now, look, I'm sure there's some folks here that probably haven't heard of Island. I don't know why. It's probably one of the best kept secrets that's out there. You do things a little bit different at Island than traditional companies. Tell us more about Island Router and kind of their opening message.
For sure. So bottom line on top, Island is a wired only router, but it's truly a next generation enterprise grade router. If there's nothing else to remember about Island, remember the three S's. It's speedier, it's safer, and it's simpler. And that's really what we try to do is make everything easier from the moment you unbox it, the moment you plug it in, to all the way down to the network management aspect of it. We as a company, though, we only make routers. We don't make switches. We don't make access points. We just make routers because that's the area where our expertise is, which gives us opportunity to partner with groups like Intellinet to really help provide for you guys the most robust network solution possible on the market.
I love that. One of the big things that stood out to me, I actually visited the Island booth a little over 3 years ago. I was pretty excited about it. I was working in the industry and I came with the mission of, well, it's a toy, right? There's really not a lot there. And, how much could this really be for, the installer market? And I walked away just shaking my head. George Daggett, with your company does an absolutely incredible, he's probably one of the most patient people I've ever met. Really good and really thorough. I can talk to these guys all day long about, and people all day long about what the Island difference is, but where does Island directly impact an installer? How is it that you are making
Yeah,
a job better,
absolutely.
easier, things like that? Good.
So the island difference started in the 70s, actually. It doesn't start when you unbox the product or when it shows up. Our team has a long history of making tough things easy. And even though you may not have heard of Island the product, I can almost guarantee you've used our products in the past. We were behind the first ever LAN protocol, ArcNet. We were behind Instant Internet, the first VPN router. And today we're behind boxes that we build for ISPs. 8 out of the top 10 ISPs in North America are our customers. We handle millions of users at hundreds of gigabits per second. But we brought Island to market as a really channel focused product. You're not going to find us on Amazon. You're not going to find us at Best Buy. And a couple of things set us apart. The ease of use is for sure, I think, where we shine. But then the things that other integrators or that integrators often consider table stakes, speed and security, we are set apart. And there's two things that really stand out to me on those. One is the packet engine, which is like the actual driving force behind the router. Almost every other company uses the same open source one. And instead, we took the one from our ISP product, scaled that down, and put it in. So on average, Island is anywhere from 4 to 28 times faster than competitive routers, depending on if you
Wow.
go with Island or Island Pro. The other thing we do is on security is we do what we call island protection. So instead of maybe these robust deep packet inspection like applications that certainly are very secure, but also add a whole bunch of latency, island protection is outbound threat protection, where we actually are able to mitigate threats without latency in real time. And it starts working out of the box with no configuration necessary.
It's amazing. I actually, as you know, I use Island. Big fan of it, and the setup is just absolutely incredible. One of the big things that I found is that you're not just that standard router. Do you want to talk about the TCP connection rate? Why that is so important?
Yeah, absolutely. So, really, what's happening when we think about the internet and we think about the exact number or the way we're getting information to our devices when we make a request is it's all handshakes and it's all information being passed and then verified, and then the response is then verified again. That's the TCP stack. And when we're looking at the connections per second, every single time you're connecting to something online, you're utilizing multiple connections all at the same time. And so because our packet engine is so much more robust and so much more streamlined simultaneously than the open source one that our competitors use, we're able to have a lot more of those connections simultaneously. Now, what that translates to is a more seamless experience for whether it be a single end user who's connecting to one site that's utilizing multiple connections, or we have multiple end users on multiple devices simultaneously. Island's able to get all of those lookups and make all of those connections simultaneously rather than sharing bandwidth the way that traditional routers have to share.
Huge. And then, one of the other ones that I was really impressed with was the DNS rate as well. You guys have done, I just, you continually peg those charts again and again and again.
It all goes back to that packet engine, and it's a noticeable difference. I would tell you that if you're someone with kids at home, if you put an island router in your home, you'll notice the difference. Your kids will notice the difference. And the crazy thing is, when you pull the island router out, they're going to come and say, "What did you do to the Wi-Fi? Why is it slow all of a sudden?"
100%. So look, we had featured the first island that you had. I wanted to kind of quickly talk about this product a little bit, but I'll take you back that 3 years ago at CEDIA, when we were in Denver, it was pretty incredible. Actually, I don't know if that was Dallas, it might have been, but at Dallas, you had Frontier with a huge banner out front talking about 2.5 gig. And Don and I talked about this earlier in the first session. It was a big deal to get up to a gig speed. I remember, we used to pull wireless, to hit gig wireless out of an access point was a huge. Like, we've always pulled wire, and even theoretically with wire, you weren't able to do that much. There wasn't anybody else. So to see Frontier out front talking about 2.5 gig was a really big deal. It was a huge claim. But today we're at 10. We're at 10, and I think that's probably where the ceiling is going to tap out. You've got, SMB that's out there, but this was a complete other departure. What's on screen right now? This was a much more premium router than what we traditionally have seen. Why don't you talk a little bit about this and then paint that picture for what the future is going to foretell for an installer? What should they be thinking about?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's just like you said, Pete, 3 years ago, 2.5 gig was a big deal. And that's when Island first released. So we were actually a little bit, we missed the mark just a little bit by releasing a single gig product 3 years ago. We were very quick to course correct. That's why you see Island Pro in front of you. That's the inspiration behind Island Pro is we needed a rack mount product with multi-gig, and we sure delivered. A couple of things about it. It's got six 2.5 gig ports and then four SFP plus ports testing all the way up to 10 gigabits per second. And a really nice thing is all of those ports are isolated and they're all auto detecting and auto configuring. So that means you don't even have to look and check the manual to see which one's the WAN port. Just plug your WAN in and Island will know. And since they're all isolated as well, you're going to require a switch behind each one you use, but that means that you get the nice sort of device and network segmentation that's going to protect your end users on top of that. As far as to answer the other part of your question, where the future is going, when I think about networking, there's really four things in the coming down the pipeline that worry me. Those four things are: number one is faster Wi-Fi. Faster Wi-Fi, faster wireless is going to put more load on the network. Number two is advanced security threats, and especially as we start thinking about as quantum computing becomes more accessible and as AI becomes more accessible, security threats are becoming um, more complex, and security software and antivirus software and the kinds of things that we need to employ to mitigate those threats is putting more load on the network, and so we need to have more robust networks in order to handle that. Number three for me is IoT, and that's just in terms of network growth. Networks today, home networks are looking like business networks used to, and business networks are looking like enterprise networks used to, just because of this explosion of IoT devices that all come oftentimes with cloud dependencies and security threats of their own. And so, in terms of managing all of those devices, making sure they all have enough bandwidth, that's where I really see the future growing. So, if we know that in the future we're going to need more bandwidth, we also know that we have as millennials and as Gen Z gets older and becomes our customer base, we have more technical end users who are looking for more agency over the network. They've grown up around computers. They care about parental controls to a higher level. They care about having the ability to see what's going on the network. That's where we're going. And the question I have is what are we doing to make sure that the installs, that the gear we're installing today is going to be able to scale with us?
Yeah, it's such an important part right now as we look at AI, as we look at what's going on with lighting, as we look at what's going on with shades, as we just the overall IoT play that's out there. It actually the response is perfect, Josh. It kind of dovetails into where we're going in the next question. This is that chance for you to get up on the soapbox, talk a little bit about as we're making these plans, as we're winding down the year, we're finishing installs out. What advice would you offer an installer for next year? What is it that you'd go through?
Yeah, that's a great question. And it seems like a really simple answer, but I'll dive into it a little bit
Yeah,
deeper. It's now's the time to get smart about networking. And we're in a space, especially in the channel, where we perhaps many of us come from audio backgrounds or video backgrounds, but networking is a very new concept relative for the channel entirely. And it's really the backbone of everything we're doing these days. I'll give you an example. A lot of the application layer stuff we're doing, things like video over IP, is heavily dependent on the network, not just in terms of having the connection, but in terms of the network performance to deliver. So oftentimes things like your Roku, for example, is measuring the network and making a decision on what quality to send over the network based on the network performance it can measure. So by installing a more robust network, and by segmenting that sort of traffic out so that it's not competing, we're adding more security, adding in parental controls and things like that. You end up delivering a better quality product to your end user across the board. The network affects everything else, not just the Wi-Fi speed.
it's huge. I'm actually going to open this up, Don, a little bit different than we did in the morning, where I'd actually ask you, and I'm going to chime in as well. I'm going to give you, do you want to go or you want me to go?
Let me know what the question is. Yeah, it sounds good either way.
Yeah, so the question is, what advice would you offer an installer before the end of the year? Um, for me, right now, it's dual failover. This is an area to begin to embrace, and most people they hear that and they're thinking, okay, well, for networking, right? I've got to bring in another ISP or something like that. For sure, and I never miss an opportunity. I have a non-traditional ISP as my partner here in North Texas. I cannot wait because we're going to go to fiber here very, very shortly. But I have never needed dual failover as much as I've needed now. And that's going to be my first half upgrade. We're going to move over to Starlink just so that I've got backup and I can carry that with me. But I'm also going to embrace it as well. I mean, we're watching some of the moves that Savant is doing. We're watching what like Rosewater Energy is doing. I'm going to be living in North Texas, living in Tornado Alley right now. Dual failover for me is also going to include power. And this is a big opportunity for folks that have an electrician's license or the ability to work with a GC that can bring that in. But, from an installer perspective, if you're not thinking dual failover in both networking and in power, it's a big deal. I'm curious where you go, Don, because we've talked a lot about just some of the newer stuff, that's going on. You've always got me very cautious now. Anytime I click on a hyperlink, I'm like, oh my gosh, am I going to lose everything? But if you were going to offer advice to an installer before the end of the year, what would it be?
Yeah, so going off of what Josh was saying about Island, 100% network segmentation. Um, Here at Intellinet, we used to have this printer that could print a full billboard. So we needed VLANs and network segmentation because when we get a new employee, we don't want them accidentally printing to that billboard printer like their first day tasks. Um, and things like that happen. And then this employee is like, oh, what am I doing? Like, it's just a bad day for everybody around. But on the other end of network segmentation is we're talking about Island being able to segment your network. Well, we can do that as well with we can work with both systems, Intellinet and Island, and make highly segmented networks, VLANs, and then if somebody in sales clicks on that phishing link, it doesn't go to the whole company. So not picking on sales, maybe marketing, maybe customer support. It's all spread around all departments equally. But if somebody clicks on the phishing email, um, like we like to say, hey, we have this great antivirus, we have this great product, and we do. Everybody is using the Threat Locker and CrowdStrike. These are great tools. But as we're seeing now with AI, we had people on a couple Saturdays ago, we all went to an AI conference in cybersecurity. And one of the things they were telling us, people were able to, during the conference, during the event, create malware based on that information. So AI was also linked to where somebody did essentially what would usually be a nation state level attack, where they were able to use AI to get into these companies. And you can kind of trick the AI into making a local AI without the guardrails. So somebody who traditionally wouldn't have the ability to make their own malware can do that. So with AI, we're looking at better phishing. Now they're proofreading their phishing emails. The tools are there. Everybody's still getting the emails where it's like, hello, I need password mine broken. Like we're all still getting some of those phishing emails that are just bad and they get deleted. But there's the ability with some of these better nation state groups or even better cybercrime groups that they can use AI and they can be a lot more dangerous. So my two suggestions would be network security, segmentation, and then active user training on what is phishing, what is useful for your environment, and then what is something that just immediately gets deleted for your company.
Awesome. Josh, we've had a really great time talking both in the morning session and the afternoon. Why don't you tell us how we learn more about Island?
Yeah, absolutely. Island's website is islandrouter.com. There we have a whole support site full of training videos, informational really bite-sized chunks, like 2 to 4 minute, here's how you do this very specific thing, as well as some big overview things. Is one of the things that Island's doing differently is where, with the keeping in mind that we have a more technical generation coming into this industry, and in terms of being our customer base, is we're giving you the opportunity to share agency over the network with your end users. Our UI, if you so choose, is so end user friendly. It's so easy to use. And we even have resources for your end users as well. Of course, I'm accessible. My email is josh@islandrouter.com. I would love to meet. And then our entire support team is also available to you. Our support is US based, and we would love to dig in deeper and learn more about your use cases and figure out if it's the right product for you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Josh. We'd love working with your product. We've got a couple of different avenues for folks to be able to buy both Intellinet, everywhere else. If you are in the Houston market, I don't think we're going to name the distributor, but if you're in the Houston market, you probably have an idea, distributor wise, where to go. But Josh is actually out tomorrow on Wednesday, where you can directly come in, see the product, talk to Josh, get in depth about where those changes can go through. Josh, thanks again. Good luck this afternoon and tomorrow. And Don, we're going to talk a lot about network here in a second. It's probably one of the better avenues I think that we've gone. So, Josh, we'll talk to you soon. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me.
All right. Don, here we go. Talk to me about flat network versus segmented network.
Okay, so this is something that you guys are going to see I'm really passionate about, where a flat network, we're looking at these two diagrams of castles. So in a flat network, a user can see the whole network. There's no segmentation. And an example of this is like maybe a small company, they don't have any VLANs. I've worked for companies like that, and I could see, I got in my first day and I could see my boss's computer. And this actually happened, and it was a few years ago, and then it was a couple of months when I got to know them, and I was like, okay, here's the problem. But on that flat network, that is a huge vulnerability, because you have that new employee and they can see everything. Well, also, if an attacker gets in from that one phishing email, they get to see everything. So what we want is a segmented network. We want a network where we have sections and VLANs, and we look at to the right on the picture of the castle. That's the type of network we want. We have the firewall that's blocking packets based on rules. So say we had that phishing attack this morning. By this afternoon, I would have an email out saying, hey, we had a phishing attack. It looks like this. Please don't click on it. And then on the back end, the IT end, I would go into our firewall and block the IP of that phishing page. And then we would block it, and then the user can't get there. So that was kind of like how our firewall worked. But we also, when we're looking at segmentation, we're looking at saying even more than that. We're saying these devices are for sales. So upstairs in Intellinet, we have the sales office. Sales on the network is using the sales printer. They're not able to connect to a warehouse printer. They're not able to connect down to the other company we have downstairs is AV Waves. So they can't connect to each other because we use the segmented network. And that's really powerful, and that's really great for cybersecurity, because if we have an incident in one company, it doesn't affect all the companies in the building. And it even doesn't affect all of the departments. So let's go to the next page here. You see on the next slide. Awesome. Okay, so this is a little bit more about that flat network. And that flat network, everybody can see everything. We don't have segmentation. Sales can print to that warehouse printer, and then we have somebody running down to the warehouse and picking up the device. We actually had this when I was working at a college, because of how our devices were segmented by domain. Our office had one printer, and then sometimes people would be able to print to the other one a mile away. So after a few short emails with the IT team, they were able to say, oh, wait, we're going to put that printer on a different part of the VLAN, and only computers at the central office can use it. people at the other offices, well, we're going to give them a different printer. And you can do a lot of this when we're talking about domain servers, but on the network level, we're just talking about VLANs today. So that flat network is where there's no network segmentation. One of the famous examples was from the podcast Darknet Diaries, a great podcast for a lot of cybersecurity information and just really entertaining. But what they were talking about was this cyber attack on Saudi Aramco. And because that Saudi Aramco network, I think 2005, 2015, I don't remember the exact year, but it was a while back. And um, so many of their computers were actually destroyed that they had to go back to the manufacturers, not to like Apple or Microsoft but they had to go back to the actual factories that Apple gets the computers from. And then they had to start making the orders there. So it actually affected, it was such a large attack, and this company bought so many more computers that it changed for a year the inventory of these computer manufacturers. So the issue with the flat network was somebody got into one office and they were able to take out the computers in the whole country. So it would be like if somebody in Miami opened that phishing email and then somebody in Chicago is able to also have their computer destroyed. And that's exactly what happened. The attacker that was nation state destroyed all the computers from, I believe it was like Jeddah to Riyadh, everywhere in Saudi Arabia that was connected to that network had some computers that were just destroyed. Okay, so let's go to the next one. And they've learned a lot since then. Their networks are a lot more secure now, but it was just a really interesting example. So now we're talking about VLANs here. So the best way to picture VLANs is those segmented zones. And I like to talk about it as a castle. So our first zone is the DMZ. That's the demilitarized zone. This is where we put things that need to be directly talking to the internet. So if you've done like hacking challenges or cybersecurity training, you know that one of the ways that people get into your network is they attack like a web server on port 80. So maybe somebody in the office, they're like, oh, we can save, let's say, average internet website, $12 a month. We can save like at least $200, $300 a month because once you actually get to the fees, you're getting higher. So like, okay, we can save money by hosting our website in the office. A lot of companies do this. So the smart way to do it would be to put that web server in the DMZ. The bad way to do it is to put it in your actual network. And then someone can do what's called a pivot. A pivot is when you move from one device to another to get more interesting information or more valuable information. And when we're talking about pen testing or cybersecurity, VLANs are one of the basic ways that we can set this up to make the network safer. Because you can hack, like you can go from one VLAN to the other, but you have to spoof what's called a VLAN ID. And the sophistication needed for that means that you have higher trained, better hackers. And most of the time, the people like the smaller groups are going to see some of these VLANs. They're going to see, oh, or honestly, they won't be able to see the other devices if we do it right. They'll just see a small network segment. And if they can't get to anything they need or anything they want to make money, they're just going to leave. Cybercrime, in a lot of ways, has started to take business models similar to other businesses. So they're all about like using their time in the most economic way. So a lot of times you just have to be smarter than a very vulnerable company. VLANs are a great way to do that. So each VLAN is its own area. And one thing we like to talk about with VLANs is we can move or add ports. So one port can be part of two VLANs. So say Pete is in our sales team. Well, Pete gets a promotion and now he needs to also be able to interact with devices in the finance tower. So we'd be able to tag the port that Pete uses on his computer, and Pete can have access to two VLANs. So this is all administratable. So we can even start to have people from different departments have access to different VLANs, and we can make it based on job role. But yeah, the essential part of this is we're segmenting the network. Sales only needs to see the sales printer, the sales server, the sales file system. They have a different experience as an employee than IT or than marketing or management. Okay, so let's go to the next slide. Okay, so here's a little bit more about how this works. The one we've talked about a lot is that DMZ. And why we talk about that a lot is this is really a great opportunity with some of our products that you can create all these VLANs. We also have, and we'll talk about this a little bit, almost like a device that makes a simple DMZ. We have our Intellinet unmanaged switches. They can't make full VLANs, so if we put the VLANs into the router, that they're not going to be able to communicate that way. But what they can do is called port isolation VLANs. And what that means is each port on a device, that can be its own VLAN essentially. And we'll talk a little bit more about that in just a minute. But here's our basic idea of what VLANs do. We're segmenting our network so people only get the resources they need. In IT cybersecurity, we call this the principle of least privilege. We always want someone to get just the amount of access they need to do their job. We don't want that new IT guy to get access to the finance department. He doesn't need the company credit card on day one. He might not need that company credit card until 5-6 years down the road, or if we segment the job roles right, they might not need it ever. Let's go to the next page. Okay, so we talked a little about this, so we're going to go through it a little bit faster. But what is a DMZ? A DMZ is a demilitarized zone. So when we think of this with a castle analogy, the DMZ is like that courtyard before you get to the castle. So we're putting that web server, which is a really easy place to attack. If you do a lot of these cybersecurity trainings, you're going to know, okay, a lot of the time you get in from a vulnerability on port 80. And this actually happened with a customer that I was working with in the past, where they had a cybersecurity incident because when we were hosting their website, they had a vulnerability in the web hosting management platform they were using. So somebody logged in, they bought a $40 tool, and they were able to take over the website. And because the website also had payment information, they could get to that. But what would have been worse is if we had that website hosted in our office. Then once the attacker gets in, they would be able to take over the website and then pivot to other servers they can see in the office. With the DMZ, they can't see the devices in the office because they haven't got there yet. They still have to essentially have a second cyber attack to get into the main network. So that's really what this is all about with network segmentation. We're making it harder for the attacker. The more resources, the more time they have to sink into attacking you, the more likely they are to just go, can't do this. I'm going to go to an easier network. And they're going to go look for something like a network where the admin password is admin admin. They're going to go to a network where the passwords are password. So that's really what a DMZ does, is we would put things here that we need. Another good example is an FTP server. FTP is a file transfer protocol. So a lot of times a big vulnerability in FTP is you can log into an FTP server as anonymous. Once you get into that FTP server, and a lot of these cybersecurity trainings, also in reality, there's sometimes a list of somebody will have like a file in there that has passwords, and then you can pivot and get into other things. Another thing might be this web server might have either a open SSH port, or even sometimes people will have computers where we leave an RDP port open. SSH is a way that you log into a server to program from outside the network. RDP is a way that we would remote desktop protocol. So you'd log into that computer kind of before TeamViewer and before those tools. A lot of people just left RDP open. Right now, that's like a big no-no. If you do have RDP, you want to have like two-factor. But anything that's vulnerable, we put in the DMZ, and then we have additional defenses. Another thing we put in the DMZ would be a VPN server. So that virtual private network, that VPN, where we're going to be able to log into the office from outside. Well, we would put something like that in the DMZ, or we try to protect it as much as we can. Okay, so let's go to the next slide here. So yeah, on all of our Intellinet managed switches, you can create a VLAN. We'll use these VLANs internally for each department to have its own VLAN. So for example, sales will have one VLAN, marketing will have another, IT has another, the warehouse, AV Waves, which is our installer company, they'll have one VLAN downstairs where they have separate devices, a separate network, like a separate network server room, things like that. And all of this is really essential with network segmentation, because we want to make it where if one department is having an IT issue, the whole company isn't out, or one bad virus can't wipe out the whole company. Because otherwise, like this has happened in the past at other places, at other clients, where some like one individual user would be able to have a virus that spreads, like that Saudi Aramco example. Okay, so let's go to our next slide on this. Awesome. So yeah, so the big thing we talk about with Intellinet switches is to get VLANs, you need to have a managed switch. We have kind of like this next best thing, which is our unmanaged switches with a port isolation that you can just slide. So there's a little switch on here that you slide to the VLAN, and then each individual camera is its own VLAN. The reason for this is maybe you're a smaller installer, you don't have network segmentation for the camera network, which is very common. Usually for like corporate IT environments, when we have a camera installer come in, we just give him a separate IP. He sets everything up in that network segment, and they may not know that there's anything else in the network because for those devices, they don't see anything else. So with this type of switch, really what we're patching is the ability that if somebody gets into, say they bought like a cheap camera, and then they never changed the password. Most cameras, the default password is admin admin. Everybody was getting a lot of criticism to the Louvre recently. The password to the Louvre cameras was Louvre. So things like that, somebody gets into that one camera, we don't want them able to pivot to another camera or even to another device. A really famous example of that pivoting is one of the major hotels in Las Vegas, I believe 2 or 3 years ago, had a cyber attack that started from an IoT device that was in the IT director's office. The IT director had a fish tank as his hobby. So he had a web managed thermometer, and the attackers were able to see it. They logged into that thermometer, and then they could pivot from the thermometer because it was in the same network segment or VLAN as the IT director's everything. So something like this would stop that. We always want to think about when we put in IoT devices, what do they really need access to? And we usually want to make a separate VLAN in home users' environments where a home user would say, okay, all my IoT stuff is in this VLAN. All of my IoT stuff, I'm kind of keeping it separate from the rest of my network. Okay, so let's go to the next page. Okay, cool. So we have another thing we wanted to talk to you guys about. And this is a recent article that has been getting kind of like going viral online. CNN just did this great article about how criminals are using Wi-Fi tools, DOS tools, and then general scanners. So they're using devices like this to, and it could be a small device. Let me see if I have, oh, here we go. I have a small Linux phone that can be used to do this type of DOS attack. So a DOS attack is we would essentially send a packet to the Wi-Fi router, and we're doing this when we're not logged in, and then we can see the Wi-Fi routers in our area, and essentially we make that device, it's constantly waiting for this signal, and it just drops all the connections. So this is called a Wi-Fi DOS attack. There's tools in Kali Linux, which is a pen testing library or pen testing Linux. And it can be something as simple as this, like a small phone that you rooted, and you put Linux on, and then you can download tools to it, and it's something very easy to do. So a lot of criminals are now taking that type of tool and they're driving up to houses, turning off web cameras, turning off Wi-Fi networks, and then breaking into the house when the security cameras are disabled. So let's go to the next slide. Yeah, so this is another example of how that works. And the DAuth packet essentially be sent to the Wi-Fi router. The Wi-Fi router would drop the connections, waiting for the next part of the. It's like it's waiting for this packet that never comes, and then we just keep doing a loop of that, and then the network can be shut down. And on the other spectrum, that's a little bit less sophisticated, but it works really good, is a signal jammer. So in those Wi-Fi frequencies, someone would just blast a whole bunch of frequency information on multiple frequencies, and then that would take down a Wi-Fi network. The cartels have been doing this for a few years, where there was like news reports of it, where the cartels would have like a device that would have like 8 or 9 antennas taken apart from commercial routers. They'd plug a bunch of antennas into each other on these routers, make a homemade device, and once they approach a target, they drop all the cell phone signal, all the Wi-Fi for that individual for a small area, and then the person isn't able to call for help. So that's something that now some of those tools are becoming more prevalent in the US. That it's really a great opportunity for installers to say, hey, we see those cheap Wi-Fi cameras, but what we think as consumers, what you should really be looking at is a structured, segmented installation approach and wired PoE cameras with tamper prevention. So let's go to the next slide, and we're going to talk a little bit more about that. So yeah, these Wi-Fi jammers have been used by organized crime for a long time. The DAuth attack is one way to do it, but there's a lot. There's a lot of ways to do this. Flipper Zero is one that's gaining a lot of popularity on YouTube, TikTok, Instagram. If you're not familiar, Flipper Zero is like this little device. It's smaller than a standard phone, and it looks like a toy, but it can do a lot of Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, kind of like pen testing, but also where it'll guess essentially the frequency a gate uses to open gates, and people are using them to like open gates at parking garages, open gates in neighborhoods. It can also try to guess frequencies to open car doors. It can do a lot, which is why I believe Amazon said in the US they're blocked. Several other countries have just said no, and we're not importing those, and then they don't get past customs. But there was a few months where they were getting through customs. So if you go on like Facebook Marketplace, you probably shouldn't buy one because I think it's illegal in the US right now, but you will be able to see them, and whether or not an undercover cop greets you will be another issue. So yeah, there's these Wi-Fi jammers, and really for us as installers, we want to start telling our customers, hey, those cheaper cameras probably aren't going to do as well as you think. This is why we're going to want you to upgrade. And for a lot of customers, like a small Blink camera, Ring cameras, those are great, but there might also be other alternatives that now we're starting to see the need for. Okay, so let's go to the next slide here. Yeah, so this type of attack and any really Wi-Fi or Bluetooth attack can be done with a lot of really cheap boards. So like Raspberry Pi boards. This is like a different PCB board. It's not a Raspberry Pi, but these are actually cheaper. So you can get some of these boards for like $10, $15, and they'll run natively Linux, which means like you don't have to hack the device. You don't have to change anything. You're ready. When you open it up, you turn it on, you have a Linux that you can use. And Linux is like the operating system that all of our hacking tools run on. So for cybersecurity, everything runs on Linux. So there's a lot of pen testing, and pen testing is essentially legal hacking, where you would go in and you would get a contract to look for vulnerabilities, look for ways a hacker could get in, and then help the company fix it. And a lot of this stuff, like I'm studying for in my time, where I'm studying to get penetration testing certifications, IT certifications, and that helps me here at my job at Intellinet. So let's go to the next slide. Okay, so just kind of as a wrap up, what can you do? So most of the people here are either shop owners or installers. So what you guys can do is start telling your customers, hey, like I see that $40 Wi-Fi camera. It looks awesome because you're like, oh, well, like your husband and your brother, two guys, we can set up the camera network for the whole house in like 5-10 minutes. But the reality of it is, or two women, they could set up the camera network in 5-10 minutes as well. But the reality of it is these solutions are cheaper, but they aren't as secure. If someone can take out my web cameras, my Wi-Fi cameras before they get to my house, I've actually had one of mine was stolen. Like someone went under my house, stole from underneath the house, and then threw the camera. So like eventually, probably next few months, I'm going to be doing a major upgrade on my camera system, and these are things that I would avoid. So you want to tell customers, hey, you need to buy wired PoE cameras. You need to purchase cameras with tamper prevention, and you want to start thinking about an installer that knows how to hide the wires. There's also special mounts where you can put on the outside of the house and the wires aren't visible. So other basic things would be like placing all of your security cameras where they can see each other. But with a wired network, this attack doesn't do anything. You can't jam um, with the same tools. You can't jam a wired network. I mean, you could do other types of attacks, but someone would have to physically be in the house where they wouldn't be trying to hack the cameras. They'd be trying to cut the wires or turn off your power. So yeah, like you want to think about tamper proof. So some of these cameras now have where somebody spray paints the lens, that would send an alert to the customer. Okay, and then that's really what we're going to talk about, these two vulnerabilities and this how network segmentation protects your network. I'm going to turn it back over to Pete. He's going to talk to you some more about Intellinet.
Awesome. Well, Don, I wanted to thank you. I'll do more at the end there, but you always do a really good job about talking about vulnerabilities and and other areas that are there. I learned quite a bit. We were talking about flippers all the way back in August, September. We did a little bit of that there, so it's good to see it come back. Folks, we're in that final segment here where I wanted to be able to talk to you a little bit about the field crew. Now, we popularized this, or we facilitated or socialized it with hashtag field crew that's out there. One of the big parts of being in the field crew is taking advantage of the Performance Pro program. And we're going to really develop this even more in 2026. Don and I, and the sales team here have a commitment to partner success. We want to hear about the installs that are going on and where we can make that better for you. There is a collaborative growth strategy. And utilizing Intellinet gives you something right now, something that's going to educate you, something that there's going to be additional margin opportunities with promotions and things like that. But it's so much more, core SKUs reflecting the installer needs. Throughout all of these webinars, we've had, folks out that are actual dedicated installers. And what we're trying to do is just build a rapport, but also build a playbook of products that you can use on a single, not just on one project, but all of your projects that are there, and then to provide supplementary products that'll enhance and bring out some additional profitability. Some of the best ways to engage with us are going to come up just after this slide. So I'm going to pause and give you a second to get your phone out, get your camera up and running, because we're going to utilize a lot of QR codes right now. One of the best ways to get involved with us is to sign up for the Performance Pro program. And this is going to be things like professional recognition, some dedicated community support. Don and I are going to be putting out installation tips monthly for you, product updates when new products hit, as well as network building that's out. The other thing that you want to take a quick picture of, and I'm going to use this number a lot, but it's important because it goes directly to Don and a great team for tech support. It's 1-888-844-2636. For those of you in the cheap seats, that's 1-888-844-2636. And it's 100% dealer focused. Now, one of the big things about working with dealers in the field, we love to see cabinets. We love to see outdoor installation. So as you take pictures of your job, post those on social media, but give us a chance. Upload those to this QR code. We'd love to host it on Instagram and talk about some great installs. When we talk about Instagram, one of the other areas we'll just quickly go through our social media. We've got a Facebook page. There's a QR code for it. We've got LinkedIn if you're looking for more established and business clientele. Our website, and I actually get giddy about this. This QR code is going to take you directly to our ticket system so that you can set up time with Don and then just better engagement overall. All great QR codes that are there. Social, though, has taken a much different realm. It's not just picture oriented. Social media now involves YouTube. And Don's done a really good job, as well as Josh, of putting out individual product updates. These are quick, easy, digestible bites that you can go and you can learn a little bit more on us on our dedicated YouTube channel. And again, here's Don's great tech support number, 1-888-844-2636. Now, customer service contacts, if you want to learn more about sales, drop us an email at sales@Intellinet Solutions. There's a phone number there that's up, as well as technical support. This is going to take you right back to Don. And again, that great number. And then if you just have a general inquiry, if you're working on something kind of blue ocean, something that we might not normally do, we can build just about anything, but send us an email at sales@icintercom.com. If you've made it this far, the question's probably been answered, but why choose Intellinet? What you're getting here are reliable products, and that involves not only PoE switches, but patch cables and a variety of different other things, tools and testers, and it's designed for people just like you. Don's demonstrated again and again the expert support that you're able to get, but we've got access to engineers worldwide. We are a worldwide company. We can get you all the way down to the factory level. And then industry focus. We really are here to support not just active but passive networks as well. And there's a lot of different avenues that you can grow with us. One of the big things though that's coming up in January is that homage to Sammy Hagar. We can't drive 2.5. We're going to do a really big drive on just higher speeds, getting past gig speed, getting up to 2.5, and really driving the message on 10 gig network switching for next gen installs. So 10 gig in January joins the field group. We've got a lot going on. As we wrap up this webinar and talk about the best of 2025, do me a favor and give yourself a pat on the back. You are the best of 2025. All of us are trying to be better versions of ourselves. And it's been a really interesting year. We've grown, we've learned, we've achieved so much. And as you're looking in that rear view mirror, look at the growth that you've done and look at the support that you've gotten from companies like Intellinet. One of the best parts of support that I've got is my partner here, Don, from customer service. He does an absolutely great job. But both of us are buoyed right now by Taylor, who sends all the email and social media information out. Really super appreciative of them. And then the sales element of our team, we've got Ian and we've got Armando and Josh, and all of these are just absolute rock stars here to help you find a solution and to do a faster, cleaner, and profitable install. And there's so many other people. My name is Pete Allenhorst. I'm joined today with Don, and we've recapped the best of 2025 for Intellinet Network Solutions. We wish you a really happy holiday, a very safe holiday. We can't wait to grow with you next year. Please be safe and be good to one another. We'll talk to you soon.